You're listening to Overdoing It, the Rhode Island Library Podcast. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Overdoing It, where our team of library workers dish about their latest reads, views, and passions, alongside fascinating conversations with local luminaries. I'm your host, Lauren Walker, Director of the Coventry Public Library, and my pronouns are she, her. And today I'm joined by Anne Conway, Director of the Museum of Work and Culture in Woonsocket. Welcome, Anne.
Thank you, Lauren.
A little bit later in the show, we'll talk about the museum and its upcoming events and exhibits. But before we get to that, let's start out, as we always do, with what have you been reading and watching?
Well, I've just picked up a book, and now I can't. I just started. It's a Newport something. I can't remember the title right now, but it's a novel, but it's about but it's based on true families in Newport,
Okay.
and it goes back and forth between. Of course, today, and then it goes back to the 1850s, and it's follows like a family, rich mensch, they own a mansion, and it's all the. It sounds like it's going to be a really cool book. So I just started that, but I think I read one chapter. Sorry, I can't remember the title.
No, that's okay. I'll have to look that up, though. I'm sure if I can do some digging, I can figure out what the book is.
Yeah.
I just recently read, I think it's called Glitz, Glam, and a Damn Good Time. And it's
Oh,
about Mamie Fish, who was one of those people who had a mansion in Newport. And she used to throw a lot of parties. I'm going to have to look up who it's by. Jennifer Wright is who it's by. And so that one was nonfiction. So it's not a novel, it's just like about her. And I thought it was really well rounded. It talks about how, if I remember correctly, she at first was vehemently against women's suffrage. I think Alva Vanderbilt was throwing parties for women's suffrage, and Mamie Fish wanted some attention too. So she decided, I'm going to be against women's suffrage and
oh,
throw parties about that. And I don't know, but it's interesting because in many other ways we would now call her a feminist, but at the time she just kind of jumped on a random cause that she thought would get her a little bit of attention. So
oh.
she was definitely a complicated woman, but it's always fun to read about the types of parties that they used to throw in Newport in the 18 and early 1900s. It's
Um,
amazing.
yeah. So my book is The Lost Summers of Newport.
Okay, The Lost Summers of Newport.
Yeah.
Well, we will have to compare our Newport books after
Yeah,
you read it.
absolutely.
Now, as a Canadian and also an American, have you been watching the Olympics?
Absolutely, absolutely. Very exciting. Women hockey. It's just not quite sure where my heart is. I'm just happy to see these women playing so hard, and it's just amazing. That sport has come such a long way for women. So very, very exciting.
Is hockey your favorite of the Winter Olympic
I
sports?
oh I don't know. I love hockey. It's exciting, but I do I love the skiing events. Yesterday I was watching the luge with my grandkids, and it was fun to watch, and so I really like the Winter Olympics. Yeah,
That's a fun one because the camera goes with them through the
yeah,
luge, and it's like
yeah.
almost like you're in one of those like virtual reality rides. You
Absolutely. But
get a
all
little
the
dizzy
events,
watching it.
yeah, it's come a long way. Like even with all the drones, with the ski jumps and the snowboarding, you feel like you're there. It's just
Yeah.
really amazing.
Yeah, we were watching the men's ice skating the other night, and we saw. Now, I am not going to remember any of their names, but I know there was an American that they were expecting to do very well, and he unfortunately didn't do very well. And then I felt bad afterwards that they were really focusing on the fact that he didn't win, and weren't really focusing on the fact that the individual who did win, I think he was the first person ever from Kazakhstan to ever win an Olympic medal. And he
Uh,
won the gold for men's figure skating. So
yeah.
that
Oh,
must have been
yeah.
really exciting for him. And I
I know.
felt bad for the American that instead of focusing on the winner, they were focusing on someone who didn't win. So yeah.
Yeah, there's different angles, I guess, from
Yes.
the thing. Yeah.
But amazing to watch. I mean, all of it is, I barely even work out. So watching the Olympics is like watching superheroes, basically.
Like superheroes, you're right.
Yeah. So, for those who have been listening since the Roadie Radio days, they may remember the episode that you and I recorded together in 2022. But for those who don't know, can you tell us a little about the Museum of Work and Culture?
Sure. So the Museum of Work and Culture is a Rhode Island Historical Society museum. We are located in Woonsocket. We are in an old mill building born and built in 1919. It was originally called the Barney Worcester Mill. The mill operated, changed hands through time, and actually closed in the early 1990s. Became vacant, and during that time, there was the idea that there should be a permanent place in Woonsocket to tell the story of immigrants, the story of the working class. And a group of people originated with at the city with the mayor back then was Mayor Charles Baldelli, who thought like we can, certainly come up with some content, some narratives, and try to identify a place of a museum, and also try to raise funds to have a quality museum. And then if you remember this, so that idea started just a little bit before the actual building closed. So the idea was about 1988, 1989, and then the banking crisis or the credit union crisis here really put the project to the back burner. And then this building closed and became available, and the city turned to the Rhode Island Historical Society at that time and said, "Would you be interested in partnering and help the city raise funds to create this museum and to eventually operate the museum?" So that's how sort of like the background and how we came. The city still owns the building, but it is operated by the Rhode Island Historical Society. So it's been a great partnership for all these years, almost 29 years. And well, the stories we tell here, the stories of the people who came to work work in the textile industry and settle in this area to really find a better life for themselves and their children. So during the times when manpower was needed, certainly, during after the Civil War and on, we needed people to work in the mills, and that's when owners would send recruiters to small towns in the province of Quebec. Often parishes, often you waited outside the church on Sunday to talk to parishioners, to the people who came out of church. Most of them were farmers and had very, very large families, and often it was difficult to feed all your children and to depend on a very, very short season to grow everything you needed. So they were offered to come to a place like Woonsocket, and that they could come and make more money in a month that they could make an entire year on the farm,
Wow.
and it was true. And of course, not everyone came to Woonsocket. Many people settled in from Lewiston, Maine, to Lowell, Mass, to Manchester, New Hampshire. But here in Woonsocket, we certainly welcomed thousands of French Canadian immigrants, and to the point that in 1920, Woonsocket was known as being the most French city in the U.S., with
Oh,
70% of its population that was French Canadian.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, yeah, we were not the biggest city. Certainly, like Manchester was a larger city. Woonsocket probably at that time, about 1920, we're talking about maybe 55,000 people, but per capita, we were definitely the largest French Canadian population.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know about the recruiters that they would go to Canada to the small farming towns and just find people. That's
Yeah,
really
absolutely. That's
interesting.
what we, tell the kids when they come here on tours. All our students is, we didn't have the telephone, we did not have, the internet. So you really had to travel to spread the word. And after that, well, there was a lot of, families wrote to one another when they, very often we have like an old letter that we always share with the students when they come, where a brother writes to his brother in Canada and says, come, and there's so much work and you'll make more money that you can spend. And certainly that's something that when you lived on a farm, you didn't have that luxury to have a little bit of, you know, a little bit of money at the end of the week to go to the movies or to, buy a little item that you would never have a chance to buy.
Yeah. I wonder what it must have been like to be a farmer in Quebec. You said a small season, and I feel like our winter here in New England has been especially bad this year, and I can
Yeah.
only imagine what it must be like. I know Quebec is significantly colder than it is here generally, so they must have an even smaller spring, summer, fall season, and then the rest of the time it's just freezing. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, it
it's
was very,
wild.
very difficult, and what happened too at the time that this immigration took place, the farms were not producing well, even in the summertime.
Okay.
So we didn't have the methods of farming like we have today with rotating the soil, and they just like the soils would get depleted, and everyone was only given a certain or was able to buy just a small parcel of land. So it was really, a huge, it was a big decision for many to come to move to New England. But you were told that you could bring with you something that was very important, and it's called la survivance. And la survivance, of course, means survival. But for the French Canadian was this cultural survival that had started even right after la conquête, the conquest, after, the English won the battle in the Plains of Abraham. um, the French Canadian decided that they had it was a way of life to keep your language, your faith, and your culture. And when they moved here to New England, they brought this survivance with them, and they continued this fight, and they were very successful for a very, very long time to keep this survival. They built their own churches and their own schools, and their social life was really built around church and the community. So they were able to keep that French and that culture and their faith, and that's what really was a very big help for them in the new land.
Yeah, I know as we've spoken about before, my family on my mom's side, my grandmother, my meme, was French Canadian, and her family came down. So her mother was born in Canada, and it's wild to me that actually her father and her husband came to Fall River, and 11 years later, she and her mom followed. I mean, I can't believe that it took them so long to that they were apart for that long, but that's what the records show, at least when it shows on the census what year they came over. So unless there was some reason why they fudged that number,
Yeah,
I'm not sure. Or if maybe the census taker misheard it. I know that their names are always wrong. Their first names are always wrong in the
yeah, but one
census.
possibility, and something that many families had sort of like made a decision to do is that they would come here in the wintertime to work.
Okay.
And they would keep their farm. So they would go back and, they would leave the job because there was
Hmm.
always going to be another job the next season. And they would go back and they would work on the farm during the summer months and then go back
Interesting.
here. So there was a lot of that back and forth. So,
Yeah. Okay, that makes more sense then.
mm,
And I know that my meme was still involved when she was alive with her church and the like French association
mhm.
with her parish, and all of her friends spoke French, and I know she spoke French at home, but she didn't speak French a ton to me, and my mom didn't speak French a ton to me, so I've been trying to learn it pretty much my whole life, but I still do Duolingo, and I'm picking it up a little bit faster as I try to get a little bit more serious about it. But it's so interesting that they came here and just kind of created their own little communities to keep their culture alive while still also kind of assimilating at the same time.
Yeah.
It must have been a delicate balance.
It was a delicate balance, and I think our full story here is also we talk about how people this Americanization sort of process and how it took place, and in many cases it was through the unions. So you worked in the mills. Yes, you could make more money that you could spend because on the farms you didn't have the money that you could make here. However, the work was difficult, the conditions weren't good, the pays weren't good, and it was by joining the unions. One of the largest union here in Woonsocket was the ITU. It stood for the Independent Textile Union at first, and then it grew to become the International Trade Union when you brought in not just mill workers, but barbers or carpenters, and these unions, encourage people to, number one, learn the English language, because in the mills here in Woonsocket, you didn't only have French Canadians. That we had also a large immigration of Italians and Irish and Polish, and so we had a real melting pot going on. And if we wanted people to sort of organize, and you wanted them to to be able to come together and fight for better working conditions, certainly it was important to communicate in one language, and also to become an American citizen so you could vote. Of course, for the unions, it was very important that their members would have the right to vote. So the unions help. In many, many cases, the immigrants come to be able to to become U.S. citizens, to be able to speak English. But it was really the 40s and the 50s. You see, even the 30s, even in the early 30s, you start seeing, that Americanization process taking place.
That makes sense. Um, so I've worked in a few museums, and there was always a particular exhibit or maybe just an item that was my favorite, that I always got excited to tell people about on tours. So I was wondering if you have a favorite exhibit or artifact in the museum.
Oh goodness. Well, I love. I mean, every one of our exhibits tells such a great story. I mean, they all the museum is sort of a timeline, right? You start in about 1880 in a recreated farmhouse. And you're in the province of Quebec, so it's very immersive. So I love this farmhouse because I think there's so many objects there that we bought those objects in Canada. We got the old wood stove. We have, the table where you would make the bread, and um, and then we added a couple of years ago an interactive presentation in the farmhouse, which is really amazing. So I love that exhibit. I love the triple decker exhibit, and that is an exhibit that we are working to expand right now. So maybe that could be the subject of another show with you, but we're doing research, we're interviewing members of the community. We want to expand the theme to tell the stories of all these other ethnic groups that I was just mentioning that also came to Woonsocket, many of them at the same time as the French Canadian and some a little later. But all these groups that have come to Woonsocket and have called Woonsocket home for generations. So we are collecting some really great stories. So hopefully within the next year and a half, we'll have that new exhibit ready for the public to see. So, like I said, that's going to be an expansion of the triple decker, which I love our triple decker exhibit. Classroom, I think that the parochial classroom where you can sit at the little desk and be surrounded by all the artifacts of the 1920s, I think that's probably the winner. If you asked visitors, and we do ask, which one was your favorite exhibit, the classroom is we'll love.
I love an exhibit where you're kind of immersed in it and you can pretend that you're back in whatever year it is. So, very cool.
Yeah, and our changing gallery too. So our Landmark Medical Center was just named after our local hospital a few months back. Landmark Medical Center. Our gallery, we have 4 to 5 changing shows, new shows every year, and right now we have a beautiful show called The Heart of Otaye, and it is the story that a woman here from Woonsocket, Vamala Savan, has developed. It's the story of Laotian immigrants that have settled in Woonsocket in the 70s, and the story is told through her grandmother's eyes, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful exhibit, and that is here till the end of February. So if not sure when we are going to air, but people still have until the end of February to see the exhibit.
That sounds fascinating. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
So I know there are some new exhibits that you mentioned coming up at the museum. What's coming up?
Well, after in our gallery, right after this Heart of Otaye exhibit, we have an exhibit by artist Deborah Baronas. She is an artist from Warren, Rhode Island, textile artist, and she's bringing this exhibit that's going to feature some of her work and also some work of other artists from that she works with, and it's sort of like the subject is the rise and fall of the textile industry in
Okay.
the local textile industry. So, and Deborah is going to also give a talk here on Sunday, March 8th. Is that possible? March
Let's see. Yes, March 8th is a Sunday.
Yes, at 1:30. And if you want to register for this talk, you can go on Rhode Island Historical Society website. So it's rihs.simpletix. So that's simpletix.com. And you can see all of our events listed and registered. The Valley Talks, this series, is sponsored by the Museum of Work and Culture Preservation Foundation and the Rhode Island AFL-CIO. So the series of talks that we have every other Sunday are free to the public, but we still encourage people to register at simpletix.com.
That's great. And so these are, how often did you say the Valley Talks are?
So the Valley Talks are every other Sunday.
Okay.
So we have one this Sunday with a Civil War reenactor, Paul Bourget, but he's going to be talking about his second cousin, Nathaniel Green, who was, of
Oh,
course, part of uh, General Washington, part of the Revolutionary War. So we are almost booked for this talk. It's going to be a very popular one. So this is this coming Sunday. Then 2 weeks later will be Deborah Barona's talk, and then we end the series 2 weeks later with Brendan Shanahan, who is a professor at Yale University who used to be an intern here at the
Oh,
museum
wow.
years ago, and he's going to be coming to talk to us about his book. The book that he wrote a year or so ago called Nativist Politics and Citizenship Rights in the United States between 1865 and 1965. So it should be an interesting subject. And
Yeah.
again, you can register at simpletix.com.
Very cool. And the museum is hosting its Salute to Spring event again this year. Can you tell our listeners about that?
Yeah, so actually, during the whole month of Francophonie, which is the month of March, we celebrate all things French. And even before Salute to Spring, we're going to kick off the month with Ciné Québec. So Ciné Québec will be on Thursday, March 5th. We start the event with a nice little wine and cheese reception. And then at 7 o'clock, we're going to be showing a motion picture, Quebecois motion picture called La Bolduc. And La Bolduc is they call that a biopic of the queen of French Canadian folk music. So just a great, great story about this woman. Her name was Travers, her last name, but she was called La Bolduc. And again, the reception at 6 p.m., the screening of the film is at 7 p.m., and it's only $25 per person. And the reason
Okay.
why we keep the cost so low is because this event is made possible by the Quebec delegation in Boston. And then our Salute to Spring, Bonjour Printemps, will be on Sunday, March 29th. From 1:30 to 4:30, and it's an afternoon long event celebrating French Canadian music, food, culture. And this year we're going to feature a Quebecois artist, actually two, because Sean Dagger, who's been here at the museum, he performed here a few times. He's a sea shanty artist, just amazing musician, got a great voice, and he's going to be accompanied by his daughter this time, Maya Dagger, who is a fiddler.
Oh,
So people, you come in, so it's $30 per person, and you choose your show time, so you can watch the show at 1:30 or at 3. There's going to be storytellers. Also, there will be, and everyone gets to have a serving of poutine prepared by Frisky Fries. So we cannot have an event here without serving poutine. So Frisky
I
Fries will be
love that.
here, and that's included with your ticket price.
That's great. And you said that was, what was the ticket price again?
So it's $30 for adults, and
Okay.
children 10 to 12 is $10, and children under 5 are free.
Well, it sounds like a great event.
It's really
Anytime
great fun.
poutine is involved, I think it's probably
Yeah,
going to be a good
I
event.
know, I know. You know, I love it so much. I need to make sure to include it to all our events just so I can have it.
So, if any listeners are interested in visiting the museum or volunteering, where can they find more information?
Well, certainly on our website, which is rihs.org, but you can definitely call us, or on the website, you'll have the hours of operations and all our events. But if you're interested in volunteering, you can stop by. We're open every day. No, well, from Tuesday through Saturday, but we're open from 9:30 to 4 during the week, and 10 to 4 on Saturdays. And you know, we are looking for docent. We're always looking for people interested in giving tours. We give a really great training. People get to shadow our tours, our guides, until they feel comfortable enough to take a tour on their own. And then if you speak French, it's also an advantage because we are looking for French guides. We don't have too many people we can take on. We get a lot of requests for French school groups. So I gave a tour myself last week to a tour from Portsmouth. They were level 2, so you can, I can mix some French and English. I can't do it completely in French, but sometimes you get we have a class coming from Brown University in March, and that will be completely in French. So it's also something that definitely, but you don't have to speak French. I mean, anyone interested in history and interested in giving tours, we welcome you to reach out to us and come for training.
Very cool. So, is there anything that you'd like our listeners to know that we haven't talked about yet about the museum or anything coming up?
As far as things coming up, I think we covered everything. The museum also has a beautiful small gift store. So for local souvenirs, we have many very interesting books, and it's also a way to help support the museum by doing a purchase in our store. So we always welcome. You don't have to pay admission to go to the museum store. We have separate entrance, and it's always a great little place to find some unique items.
Probably some good books too, if I
Yeah, we
remember
have
correctly.
great books. Absolutely, a lot of local history and national history as well. So, yeah, it's a great store.
Excellent. Well, we wrap up the show with a segment called The Last Chapter, where we talk about a library or bookish related question. And today I wanted to ask you, when you walk into a bookstore or a library, what's the first thing that you kind of gravitate towards?
Well, it depends. If I'm with my grandkids, we'll go to the back of the room and go to the children's section.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I have a curious mind, so I always go to that in a bookstore, the front table to see the new releases. I like to see, what are the last bestsellers and yeah. So I would go for the new releases.
Nice. Yeah, I generally, if it's just like a regular bookstore, I tend to go towards the back. In my role, I order fiction for the library, so I pretty much know what the new releases are already, and I know what they're about, and I'm more interested in what maybe I don't know about. And so
Yeah.
I usually head towards the back. If there are old books, if it's like a used bookstore, I'm always keeping an eye out for East of Eden, which anyone listening to the podcast is probably exhausted with me talking about it, but it's my favorite book. And when I was on my honeymoon in Italy, we found an Italian translation of it. And so now, anytime I'm in an area that speaks another language, I want to find another language translation of East of Eden. So, and the copy that I have is actually just like a standard paperback that I must have gotten probably in high school, and it has like notes written in it and everything. But I'm always keeping an eye out for an edition of that that's not, it's a little bit nicer, maybe like an older version or something with a nice binding or something like that. I haven't found one yet, but that's usually when I'm in a bookstore. If it's like a used bookstore, that's what I'll look for.
Well, I'm going to Quebec this weekend, so I'll keep an
Ooh,
eye out for you.
okay, thank you.
I can see what the title is in French because it's not, not always word for word.
I guess it would, I mean, if it's exact translation, it would just be like Est les dents,
Yeah,
maybe.
I
Yeah, I don't know how you'd say Eden in French, but
have to look at. I have to look at. Sometimes it's surprising. You'll have like they'll come up with a complete different title. So I'm not sure.
yeah. Well, I wish you the best of luck going to Quebec this weekend. I can't imagine it's very warm there right now.
No, and then to answer the question, it is à l'est des dents.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
à l'est des dents. D''E''E''N. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little bit worried about the weather. It's talking about snow Sunday night into Monday, and that's what driving back Monday. So February, what can we do?
Oh my gosh. I'm best of luck with that. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you have a good journey to and from Quebec.
Thank you so much, Lauren, and I hope to see you soon again at the museum.
Overdoing It is proud to be a resident partner of the Rhode Island Center for the Book and brought to you by library staff and community members all around the Ocean State. The project has been funded in part by the Rhode Island Office of Library and Information Services. If you'd like to share your answer to our last chapter question, send us an email at overdoingitpod@gmail.com or finding us on Instagram at overdoingitpod. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review us to help us reach more Rhode Islanders. Thank you for listening, and this has been another episode of Overdoing It, the Rhode Island Library Podcast. We're overdoing it, but you're doing just fine.